For the Chapter 14 content mastery, mainly in Chapter 14 we talked about the capacity and the legality of cases that go through court systems. So like the first part is kind of minors and the disaffirmance of a contract, like what they can disaffirm and what they cannot. How court views capacity, like when it comes to intoxication and mental incompetence. And then the next part of the chapter talks about the legality part of the cases or the court cases. So like what are unconsignable contracts and how the courts view those. And then finally I'm going to be talking about exculpatory clauses and how not all of them were enforceable, but most of them can be. So contractual capacity tends to talk about a person's well-being. So like it can be like a minor or infants, they can't like really talk for themselves because like usually the age is 18. So like if they're under 18, they're not like in the right mental capacity to actually enter into a contract. So they'll need like a parent to help with all that. So most of those are not enforceable. It also talks about intoxication and mental incompetence. So minors, usually they need to be they have to be over 18 in order to actually like be into a be competent enough to enter into a contract. There are cases where when they're under 18, the case can't really be enforceable until they turn 18, at which point then it is enforceable. So some of the exceptions are misinterpretation. So this misinterpretation of age, like if I told people I was 19 or 20 when in fact I was actually 17 at the time, that'd be misinterpretation. So that could actually be enforceable because I'm telling people I'm actually old enough when I'm truly not. There's necessaries. So this is for like goods and services. So like reasonable value of necessaries. So like if I were needed to get something like something that I actually need, that like then it could be enforceable because I need this in order to like survive basically, or something like that, so that I can enter a contract that way. And then the ratification, where if they are a minor at the time but then they become not a minor, and that only works for certain contracts, but that could be another one. So now the mental capacity or the intoxication, usually when people are under the influence of alcohol or drugs, that usually it is unenforceable and they can't make people like they can't enforce that contract be valid because they're not in the right mental state to actually be accepting stuff. They weren't, because like when people are under the influence, they can't do things, like they can't think of things clearly as they would if they were normal, like if they're like not under the influence. And then mental capacity, so like people who have mental who are like not mentally quite there, they can't like really speak for themselves or like enter into contracts exactly because they may not know what's actually best for them. So usually like there's someone there to help them with all of that. So there's kind of a justification there for when it comes to mental capacity and intoxication. And then when it comes to the legality part of it, there's a couple of times where a contract cannot be enforceable because the contract is not actually illegal. Like there's some illegal parts of it. Like if there's a contract to commit a crime, the court cannot enforce that because the contract is to make them break the law. So that's not forcible. So if someone's like they signed it, and it was to find out they had to break the law. They can't make someone do it to break the law. And then there's usury, and that's like the maximum rate of interest. So this is actually not like legal, but there are in a few states where a lender can go up to the maximum part of the interest, like the maximum rate of interest. So when it kind of comes to that, like it just really depends on the state. And then gambling, like there are some states where gambling can be a forcible contract. I know, like in Nevada or Las Vegas, especially, which is in Nevada. Like if you were to bet on something, like, hey, I'm gonna bet my house, but like you gotta put it into contract. Like I'm gonna bet my house that I like put my house on it, like that I'm gonna win, something like that. And then the unconsignable contracts. These are people, like judges, don't really base the cases on what is fair and right. They usually go off of if it's legal, stuff like that. But there are certain cases where it's just not even close to being fair. Like one side is clearly getting a lot more than the other, and like the other party is really losing a lot because of this contract. Then there are cases like that where they can actually maybe like win part of that, but usually courts usually go directly just off the contract that they've entered into, unless of course there's a really big like difference in what is done and they want to make it more right. And then the last one is exculpatory clauses. And this is where neither party can enforce it if it has been executed, so like neither party can recover the damages. These aren't always enforceable, but there are some exceptions. Like when the statute is clearly designed to protect a certain class of people, a member of that class can enforce the contract in violation, but the other party cannot, because the way the contract is set up, it's to help that class, I get to put it. Another one is the severable and divisible contracts. This is where part of the contract is illegal, but part of it is legal. So courts can enforce the part that is legal unless if the illegal part is binding onto the legal part of the contract. Then a court cannot enforce this because it's the way it's twisted around.